Speaking out of Akron, Ohio, representing Team Popping the Boys, the headline god, Jeremy Lambert, and his co-host, speaking out of Atlanta, Georgia, representing more than one royal family, the king of indie viewing, Stephen Jensen. And this is the Spotlight on Fightful.
Welcome everyone to the Spotlight here on Fightful. I'm Jeremy Lambert. That is Stephen Jensen. And shout out as always, the Big Dick MLJ for the intro. We got a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling as always. But first, Jensen, how you doing, man?
I'm doing
I
good.
thought you were wearing a Real American Beer shirt for a second, and I see it's a Real American Cody shirt instead, which I don't know if that's better or not.
No, this is a great shirt. This is actually like a double XL shirt, I think. I did not actually purchase this for myself. Somebody actually gifted it to me, which I very much appreciated. I wear it as like a around. It's a little too big to like walk around in public in, unfortunately, but it's nice for like working at home. You know, my sweatpants kind of t-shirt. So felt like just rocking it here on the show today. You know, showing support to Cody as usual, and. Yeah. How was the concert over this past weekend?
It was good. It was a lot of fun. The band that my wife really wanted to see was good, and she was very excited. Metallica was good. Rob Zombie was good, and who else did we see? That was Alice Cooper was fun. And on the way out, we caught some of ICP, so that was interesting.
Nice. I think Mose went to an ICP concert last night.
Yeah, I saw him tweet about that yesterday.
Yeah. So Mose may be joining us, everybody. He's going to try to pop on at least for a few minutes at some point during the show, catch up with Mose, and they've got another KOBK event coming up at the beginning of June. But yeah, I saw that he just saw them. I knew you just had, so I'm getting a little FOMO. I really want to get down with the clown myself. So, whoop whoop. Yeah. Outside of that, man, I don't know. Really, what else is really going on? Next week, everybody. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was gonna say Remorse Betrayal. ICP was a late addition to this because yes, they did not fit with the rest of this concert. I don't know how they were like talked into doing this because the rest of the concert was death metal or like just some type of metal or a little bit of like alternative metal type stuff. Like, I don't know what you want to call Metallica, alternative rock, whatever. It's not like they're not full on like metal like they used to be. I don't think. I don't know how to classify a lot of this stuff, but ICP regardless doesn't fit in anything these bands were doing. So yeah, I think people will call Metallica now classic rock, but like Alice Cooper to me is classic rock. AC/DC is classic rock. But again, Alice Cooper was there. Regardless, it's some type of variation of rock. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, ICP is not that.
Yeah, no, ICP still rules though. I would be interested to hear Moses kind of review of the show last night that he was at. But yeah, it's hard to classify the music now like retroactively for back then in certain cases, like you're saying, because I think of like Led Zeppelin and that kind of stuff when I think of like classic rock. But technically speaking, Metallica like is classic rock. Like if you were turning on a classic rock station, I haven't listened to the radio in forever, but like I'd imagine the classic rock stations now is Metallica. Like I think that every now and then when I'm like going to the casino and like I don't get good cell service for like the music I'm like streaming, I'll try to find some sort of radio station and it'll be like the classic hits, and it's like 90s music that I grew up on, and I'm like, it makes me feel so old. It's like I remember when these songs came out and stuff. I remember Woodstock 99, everybody. Like I remember. So anyway, it's funny because I guess like yeah, but ICP absolutely doesn't fit into any of the categories you were talking about. I don't even know what they technically are. They're kind of like rap rock, all new metal. They're not really new metal, but they'd fit. they're more similar to Limp Bizkit than they are Metallica.
Yeah, well, Linkin Park was also part of. They played on a separate night, and Korn also played on a separate.
Oh, nice.
Night.
So they did have some new metal there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, those were the other two headlining acts. So it was a 4-day festival. Metallica headlined Friday and Sunday. I think Korn was Thursday and Linkin Park was Saturday. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. So, and then the rest of the bands, like I think some of them played all 4 days. Maybe some of like the smaller bands stuff. I'd have to relook at the lineup. We obviously only went to the one day. We went to Friday's event because that was the only day that my wife's band, her favorite band, Acid Bath, was playing. So that was the only day we really could go to.
Did you enjoy Acid Bath?
They were good, and it's not like I was unfamiliar with their stuff. Like I've listened to it through her. I would never know they existed without her. But I've listened to it, and like I knew what I was getting into with them. They're not bad. Like some of those bands were just like straight up screaming. I posted one video, and the dude was just like yelling into the mic, and I don't think he was saying words, and I can't get behind that. Like I'm okay with some like screaming, like the Acid Bath like screams, but I know what they are screaming. Like I know the words they are actually saying. Some of these bands are just yelling just to yell, and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with this. I can't enjoy this.
Yeah. There's definitely like a line there. I'm not familiar with a lot of this type of music, but I know what you're talking about. There's a line there with like being able to understand it and them screaming. There's like an art to that. There's an art to all of it because technically speaking, similar to like deathmatch wrestling versus like traditional pro wrestling, like they're the same thing but different. Like there's like I know like I have some friends actually that were in like the hardcore scene or whatever, and I never really went to those shows, but I would see clips from the shows and stuff like on people's stories and whatnot. And it would literally be somebody like yelling until like their veins are like popping out of their forehead, just yell like no, I don't think they were even saying words, like just yelling with music behind it. People, but like the fans that were there live loved it, like they appreciated it, like so. Yeah, it's just to each his own. I'm glad the people there had a good time. What was the fan base like for Acid Bath? Like the crowd that was watching it, was it people like around y'all's age? Like just like seemed like pretty chill people, or like
with ages? Yeah, it was. I mean, the whole festival was mainly like adults for the most part. Like like I don't know if you had to be 21 or over to get it. You didn't have to, because I know people who went on Saturday who were not 21. So yeah, it was older people though, I would say. Like
that's what I meant by normal.
Yeah, I'd say like 20s, 30s.
It's not like just like
I guess that's older. I don't know.
Wait, kind of. I was just kind of assuming that because it sounded like things weren't like out of control, and that like if I just feel like if y'all were there and having a good time, like the majority of the crowd was probably like around our age.
Yeah, there was
like, cool.
There were probably some like teenagers and 20-year-olds. They had a pit going and everything, so sure. they did stuff like that. But yeah, it was kind of older-ish. I don't think 30's old. So if you're in your 30s, it was a variety.
Depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Well, that's cool. I'm glad that y'all had a good time and that like nobody got hurt or anything.
No, nobody got hurt. The pit came very close to us at a couple points during Acid Bath, because that was the only band like we were in there for. So there was like 4 different stages, right? And one of the stages was inside the stadium. It was held at where the Columbus Crew play MLS soccer. So it's a soccer stadium. And then one of the stages was inside the stadium, and the other 3 stages were like around the parking lot. Like it made up the parking lot area. So there were 4 different stages, and to get close to like the big stage, that's where like Metallica and Alice Cooper and Rob Zombie and all them played. Like you had to get there pretty early and get up there and everything. And then the other stages you could kind of make your way up a little bit easier for. And for Acid Bath, like we were at that stage a good like half hour, maybe even like an hour, honestly, like an hour before they were scheduled to go on, because we wanted to make sure we were there and like in it. So we were probably only a few rows deep of people when Acid Bath was playing, and then everybody else we were further in the back because we didn't care to be like super up close for them.
Nice. Have you ever crowd surfed before? I'm not assuming like you've done it at this show, but like, have you ever done anything like that?
No, I haven't. We did have people come over top of us and crowd surf during the Acid Bath portion. I'm just trying to protect my wife in those situations. Like when the pit's like starting to form, I'm grabbing her to make sure she's out of it. When people are crowd surfing, I'm like trying to lift and duck her down so she's not getting kicked in the head and everything. Like that's my biggest concern, is making sure she doesn't get caught with a stray foot or arm at any point.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. When I was younger, like in high school, and in college, I used to go to a lot of concerts, and they used to go to Music Midtown here in Atlanta, like big music festival with a whole bunch of stages and a whole bunch of people. And I've crowd surfed there a couple of times. That was mainly like to get out of the crowd, because like it would get so deep behind you that like you couldn't get out, and it's like hot as hell outside. Like you need to get water, so you'd like crowd surf to the stage pretty much so that you can get like out of there. But I'll never forget, my buddy had got both of his shoes stolen while he was crowd surfing. It was like one of the funniest things I've ever, like, we went up for the crowd surf, came down with no shoes, and was barefoot for the rest of the show. I was like, that's rough, dude. Had his shoes stolen crowd surfing. But luckily,
yeah, I would be too concerned about a lot of different things.
I would never do it now. I mean, This is like 20 years ago, dude. Like, as crazy as that sounds. Anyway, we can talk about some wrestling now, everybody. I'm sure y'all have heard us talk about concerts enough here. But I'm glad that you guys had a good time. I know your wife is really looking forward to that, so I'm glad that it was good.
It was fun. Guys, we're 12 minutes into the show. Leave a thumbs up on the video. That stuff helps us out. To leave us a super chat, all of that helps us out. I'm trying to get the fireworks going, but I don't. There we go. Okay. Leave a super chat. That helps us out. Get your question, comment, statement read on the air, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Click the subscribe button. That helps out. Leave us good reviews on iTunes, Spotify, however you're listening. All that stuff goes a long way in supporting the show and supporting this channel. All right, let's start WWE.
I need to finish the story. In the WWE, the story never finishes.
Cody Rhodes did not show up at Backlash. Is he a coward?
That's not any of our topics for today.
That's a topic I'm throwing out there now.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. This is a gotcha. I got debated. No, he didn't show up. That's okay though. I'm a little concerned about where everything is heading though, like in the short term, because I'm seeing those rumors about them maybe doing The Rock, Travis Scott, and John Cena as a trio or something.
The Rock ain't showing up for this stuff.
But I mean, Travis Scott, I think is there. I think there's plans for him to wrestle. So like, I just don't want Cody to get too. I hate to say drugged down by that, but I mean that's pretty much the best way I can put it. Like
this, I love John Cena. I absolutely love John Cena. He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. This title reign sucks. It's been awful. The Orton stuff. Some of the promos were okay. I like the one where it's like, I've been raising your kids for 25 years. Like, yeah, that was good.
That was a good promo.
But then he just gets laid out at every turn, just like he did against Cody Rhodes. He laid out on every single show. The matches aren't good, and I was not expecting 5-star classics from 2025 John Cena. John Cena wasn't delivering 5-star classics in his prime. He could raise his game on matches where he needed to, but for the most part, you knew what you were getting with Cena as a pro wrestler. So I was not expecting that with him. But the Cody match wasn't good, and his Orton match wasn't good, and now he's feuding with R-Truth. None of this is inspiring. You have the biggest heel turn since Hulk Hogan. Arguably, I don't think it's bigger than Hogan, but people want to argue it. Biggest heel turn ever. And your top feud is a feud we saw 20 years ago, and R-Truth, a comedy act. You can love R-Truth. Nothing wrong with R-Truth. He is a comedy act. He's never been presented as any type of a threat. He's a comedy act. I made the analogy. This is like if Hogan turned heel and he just feuded with Disco Inferno. Nobody wants to see that. That's not a top level feud. This sucks. This isn't good. What are your thoughts?
That's a pretty good analogy. If
Thank
Hogan turned and then started feuding with Disco Inferno, especially like pre-Wolfpack Disco Inferno, you're talking like
Disco Fever Disco Inferno.
Yeah.
He's a fine comedy act for what he is. Like, okay, but that's not who you're gonna feud Hulk Hogan with. You're feuding Hulk Hogan. Look, Roddy Piper was one of his first feuds, and that's akin to the Randy Orton feud to me. He's like, okay, you're gonna go with Piper.
Yeah.
But then he was feuding with Savage until Savage turned. He was feuding with the Giant until the Giant turned. Like, he was at least feuding with top level WCW people at that time, not Disco Inferno.
Yeah, both those heel turns were really dumb. Like, it made no sense for the Giant to join the NWO when he did, and the same with Randy Savage. I was not a fan of when either of those things happened. The thing with R-Truth, I will say this because I have said this before, either here or on the weekend, or I'm not sure, but if built correctly, I'm all for R-Truth being a world champion before he retires. Like, the guy's put in so many years. Like, if they build it right, but like, this isn't how you wouldn't do it like this though. Like, I'm not saying to do this right now, but we've seen crazy, like Jinder Mahal was the WWE champion. Come on, man. Like, I mean, like, you're telling me that like it's a, like, I'd take R-Truth over Jinder Mahal any day of the week.
What is built correctly with R-Truth?
This would have to be like, something would have to happen to make his character more serious, obviously, and he would have to go on a solid run for a while. I'm talking like he'd have to win like high profile matches for, half the year or something, and build to it even being like possible for them to. I mean, I'm not saying, once again, like I've said this before because I think that it's like, it's kind of similar in certain ways to Kofi also. Like, somebody who was there for a long time, no matter what role you gave him, always knocked it out of the park, always over with the fans. Like, I feel like R-Truth he was great even back when he was the NWA TNA champion. I mean, all those years ago. Like,
20 years ago, more than
no,
that.
I know, but that's just kind of something that's to say something that he's had this kind of longevity. Like, that we can debate all day, like how you could potentially build him correctly to where it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but I do like R-Truth a lot, and I do feel like he deserves more than what he's gotten probably. But at the same time, like, for the current John Cena run that we have right now, I definitely wouldn't. I did not expect R-Truth to have anything to do with that match with Randy Orton, and I think it's crazy if they're going to actually do R-Truth versus John Cena one-on-one for the World Championship when they have like less than 20 John Cena dates left and probably only a handful of actual matches, and you're going to use one on R-Truth. It's like it seems like a strange decision. Yeah.
I guess there's a world where R-Truth can be the world champion, but this version of R-Truth is not world champion or world title feud. He's good for what he is. He's a comedy guy. There's nothing wrong with that. When him and Miz won the tag team titles, okay, their reign didn't lead to anything. Fine. You want to give him a tag team title run? Fine. No problem with that. You want to make him the speed champion? Okay. I think he can do something with that. There's a reason he was great as the 24/7 champion, because he was great in like comedic stuff like that. The world title though, it's not inspiring.
I mean,
it's not inspiring to me.
Well, right now, and like what we're actually seeing on TV, where they're actually at, yeah, I completely agree. I think most people would. It came completely out of left field. Outside of like the tie in there with little Jimmy and John Cena's favorite wrestler and all that kind of stuff, like it was completely out of left field that R-Truth. I mean, I know they've kind of teased it with like backstage stuff or whatever recently, but like it still wasn't. Like I was pretty shocked that he was the main reason for the outcome of the match at the pay-per-view. Like that I did not expect that. And it wasn't one of those like, oh, they got me in a good way. It was more like are they really going to go with R-Truth versus John Cena next? Like, no way they actually do that. And if they do, is it Saturday night's main event? Like, there's no way it's like the next pay-per-view. Okay.
No, I think they're going to do it at Saturday night's main event.
I mean, that makes sense to a degree. I mean, they have better options than R-Truth. So don't get me wrong, but at least it's because what's the other? Logan Paul and Jey Uso.
Yes,
on the same show. It's more understandable though. Like that they're doing just like almost a throwaway. Give me John Cena title defense.
Do any of these throwaway give me John Cena title defenses? He's the world champion. It's his last year. Scott saying it's who John wants to wrestle, not who's booked for him. Maybe. I mean, Cena has said he'll do what is asked of him, that he's not asking for anybody. I'm sure that's not a full truth. I feel like John Cena has some say in who he wants to face and everything. But I don't think this is the thing of like John Cena saying, I really want to wrestle R-Truth. I think they think this is good. They think this is nostalgic and funny. And I think it's not. I think it's too much. And you want to do Orton, fine, because of the history and everything. My issue with the Orton stuff was I think the promos were as good as they could have been. And I got no interest in just watching John Cena get laid out every week. That does not make me feel like John Cena is some credible champion and a hot heel. He just gets laid out every week. Why do I care about his title run? He feels, I said this before, maybe after Backlash. He feels like generic heel A. He feels like a heel that you're just using in the mid card of like, this is what we would typically do with a normal heel in this spot. He gets kind of laid out. He cheats to win at the pay-per-view. Maybe you throw him in a comedy segment. This is what they do with every heel in existence for the most part. John Cena should not be generic heel A. He's John Cena. He was the biggest babyface of all time. He's one of the faces of the company for over a decade. It shouldn't be paint by numbers heel stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't know. Time will tell how people look back on this, but where we're at right now, people are going to look at this as like a massive fail. Like that we waited all this time for a John Cena heel turn, and like this is all we got so far, and there's not much time left. Like they've really massively pigeonholed themselves with this entire thing, with having the deadline be the end of the year, like, and having to just pretty much rush all this stuff and cram it all into a short amount of time. Because like, if the redemption arc's coming, that's happening fairly soon also. But even then, I still stand by, in hindsight, that they should have waited to do the heel turn at WrestleMania. I think that fixes a little bit of these problems. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, and as you mentioned, it's not just Randy Orton. Cody laid him out also multiple times heading into WrestleMania. Like Cena, and before that, Cena hadn't won a singles match in like 7 years or something. And now he just wins by hitting people in the head with the title belt. So
and hitting them in the dick first. I mean that.
Well, of course, that it does take a lot out of him. That's true. Can't just not mention that. But it's wild because had you asked me a year ago what I thought John Cena's last year of matches with super attitude adjustments and STFs and, these kind of things, and it's just like low blow, belt to the head, refs down, refs up at the exact split second that that's the other thing too, is like I know it's pro wrestling, but it's just so, like when they time it in a way where the refs are down because in this match, didn't like 3 refs go down? Like all the refs went down.
Orton hit a bunch with an RKO too. He hit a bunch of people with RKOs.
Right. And then eventually he hit all the agents and stuff with RKOs when the refs were all already down. And that it felt like at least 5 minutes to 10 minutes of these refs being down and everyone being down and out. And then the second John Cena gets the pin, the referee is sliding into the ring. And it's just like, I get it. It's wrestling, but like, it's still, I don't know. It was like too, I don't know. It's almost like too unbelievable for even wrestling, where it's like, you're going to do all this in like the split second he gets it anyway, but doesn't matter. Regardless, we got what we got. I will say this, the match was better than I expected it to be. Like, I had very low expectations going into it, and they did more than I expected, even to the point where John Cena got attitude adjustment by Randy Orton into that announce table, and it didn't break. So they went and got a table and did it through the table. Like, I appreciated that that was extra. Like, for those who don't know, I'm strongly assuming they only did that table spot because the announce table didn't break. So I do appreciate them for that. I'm kind of glad we didn't see Travis Scott, but I think that's going to happen again soon regardless. I did not expect R-Truth to be involved in this. And
I was almost right. I said another rapper should come help John Cena, and
it's true.
We got R-Truth, so I'm giving myself partial credit on that.
Yeah. Quick.
And the whole thing of like always ruining wrestling, it's supposed to be bad. If that's your best defense, is that this is supposed to be bad, that's not a good defense.
No.
Let's be bad on purpose. That's not a good defense of what you're trying to do then.
Yeah, especially if people are being turned off by it. Like if fans are becoming disinterested, which I can't speak to one way or the other, to be honest. I can just say from my own perspective, I've been pretty underwhelmed by the whole title run. The turn itself, huge. We can all agree on that. But I also stand by that Cody should have retained at WrestleMania. Especially
Cody's a loser,
now,
and he's sitting at home crying right now. Where is he? Where is he to save this professional wrestling? Does he not care about pro wrestling? He's just going to stand by and watch John Cena ruin it all? Some hero.
Getting a well-deserved break. I'm happy for Cody. He was pedal to the metal there for the entire last year, doing everything.
QB1
company on his back.
I didn't think he got breaks.
Well, he's got to get back on the field shortly, so we'll.
I hope it's soon.
I do still stand by like Cody's going to beat Cena in Cena's last match to win the title back at the end of the year. But
sure.
How we're getting there. Listen, I'll also say this: if this run for Cena doesn't get better, and like we get this thing with him and R-Truth, and then it just goes to like anything involving him and Travis Scott against Cody in a combination of someone, or like anything, and if it continues to be underwhelming or like just not at all to the level of what we were expecting out of a John Cena last year / finally him turning heel, I would say I firmly believe it. If it does not get better, there was no point in John Cena beating Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. There was no point in it at all. Like, if this doesn't get better, like this has to get better so that when Cody beats him, it means something. Because otherwise, I'll even go as far to say John Cena's heel turn at all. That doesn't matter at all either. If like this continues to fail, and then he just turns babyface in like a couple months anyways, and then rides off into the sunset as a good guy. I hope also, I'm interested to see what this does. If this continues to be bad, I'm interested to see what this does to the babyface turn. at the end. If fans kind of reject that again and they're like, no, that sucked. Dude, you suck, dude. We were right. You do suck. You can't wrestle. Like, we're not cheering you on the way out, dude. Like, maybe he gets booed even harder.
If he turns back babyface, a lot of this will just feel worthless.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Like,
saying.
just will. Like, he turned for what? To win one extra title, and then he realized, oh, I do need the fans. The fans were right. I'm not this guy.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Again,
it seems pointless. It seems
to
very pointless.
use the Hogan analogy here, Hogan turns at Bash at the Beach, 96, right? What if he just turned back babyface at Great American Bash 97? I don't even remember what the NWO did on that show. What did Hogan do on that show? Was that
I mean,
let's see.
this
Great
is like
American
a year
Bash,
into it.
1997. Oh, Hogan didn't even work that show. He said, fuck that.
Who was the main
All right.
event? Do you have it pulled up?
Oh, yeah. Main event was Savage and Page. So,
Oh, yeah. That was that the match that was when DDP actually beat Savage, wasn't it?
yeah.
Beat him with a diamond cutter, and that was Savage
Hogan
called that. So DDP could actually Savage was the opposite of Hulk Hogan. Savage was going out of his way to put over Diamond Dallas Page, convincing people to let DDP win so that we could have more new stars, whereas the Hulkster did the exact opposite. And
Hogan took a bunch of time off, actually, for at least pay-per-views off during this. So let's say they did this, and then Hogan, let's say he turned back after losing to Luger. He lost to Lex Luger. He lost the title, and then he was like, man, maybe I didn't need to be a bad guy to get another title. Like, look what Lex did. Lex did things the right way, and the crowd loved him. I miss that. Let me just go back to being yellow and red. What would have been accomplished in the year that Hogan had the title?
Yeah, that's hard to do like a one-to-one comparison on, especially because you would also have to add the caveat that Hulk Hogan would also announce that he's retiring in a year after he turns again or something. You know what I mean? Because that's the biggest part. That's the biggest part of the problem I have with the whole Cena thing is there's a very short time cap on it. So it's like, if we didn't know he was retiring at the end of the year, I feel a lot different about this because I would have kind of the faith of like okay, they're figuring it out. They're going to get cooking. Maybe by next WrestleMania, like we're having a completely different story about John Cena and where he's at as a heel. But we know it's over in December. So I think that ruins a lot of it, knowing that he's done in December. If he was just doing his farewell tour as like a baby face, it's fine to know because then you can go out to the shows, buy your Cena merch, see the greatest hits, what we were expecting. They did all this stuff super out of order, I feel like. they announced his retirement tour, and after that is when at some point they decided to turn him heel somewhat last minute, and also they didn't fully think through the concept of John Cena winning Elimination Chamber and not even needing to turn heel to get the title match because he already won the Chamber without the help of The Rock or Travis Scott or anybody. So like he was already in the match before he even turned heel. Like it just didn't. Just none of the timeline is like totally off.
This hasn't worked for me, brother. And I say that as the biggest John Cena fan on this podcast.
You are, of the two of us, you're definitely the bigger Cena fan, and you did the thing for a solid probably a solid 5 to 10 minutes on this show the other day. I mean, the other week.
I went at least 20 on that.
Was it 20? It was it was. I'm not giving enough credit saying 5. It was definitely at least 10. You might have done for 20. You're insane.
I went at least 20 on that one. Not quite as long as I did the one. That was a good 40 minutes.
That was ridiculous.
You Can't See Me was a good 20. Yeah.
Well,
planking, man, planking. That's how I got some type of arm
strength up. Okay.
I can do a 7-minute plank.
Do you do the Edge and
No.
Christian plank stuff?
Not
No,
unless
you
they
just
want to
do.
sponsor me. If
Well,
they want to sponsor this show, I'll gladly use the product. And I plank every single day, so it's not like I won't use it. But I ain't dropping the $100 on this thing.
it looks like a good system. Like, and maybe I should get into that. I just started doing push-ups again. I'm getting over somewhat of an injury, so I am able to do push-ups again without it being too uncomfortable, which is nice. But might get into planking a little bit. That's actually not a bad idea because that's probably not as bad on your joints and stuff if you're staying still versus going, pushing yourself up and down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah. Well, yeah. What was our other WWE topic? We're both in agreement. The Cena run has not been good.
Jeff Cobb has signed with WWE. He came in as kind of enforcer for Solo Sikoa, helping Jacob Fatu retain the United States title. Thoughts on Jeff Cobb making his way to WWE and being aligned with the new bloodline?
So they haven't announced his name, right? But people saw that they trademarked JC Mateo. Is that
so?
correct?
I'm gonna throw a little bit of water onto that. Maybe that is being used for Jeff Cobb. Don't know. They referred to him as Jeff Cobb on the YouTube videos. They referred to him as Jeff Cobb on the website. This is not a similar thing where Ricky Starks, they made no mention of Ricky Starks. They had multiple mentions of Jeff Cobb. So I'm not positive it's going to be JC Mateo.
But they did say Jeff Cobb on the broadcast, like when he first attacked out of the crowd. Michael Cole actually said it was Jeff Cobb. So they mentioned like once or twice on the actual show. But so yeah, either way, I don't think him keeping that name one way or another is honestly a big deal, to be fully honest. Like, they can call him really whatever because he's going to be mainly new to like the majority of the WWE audience regardless. Now guys like us have watched him for a long time. We know he's very talented. I was interested to see him being involved in the new bloodline, but I like the pairing. Like, I didn't think about that, even think about that option because, he's not in the NY family and he's not, to my knowledge, I don't think he's even Samoan. But that doesn't necessarily matter. But that just wasn't really on my radar because he's not like one of like the people on the actual bloodline tree. But you can easily have a backstory there where, Jeff Cobb's Hawaiian, I think, I want to say. But either way, I mean, I'm not saying they necessarily need to go this route, but Yokozuna wasn't Asian or wasn't Japanese, and they, marketed him as that. Lord Tensai was not in fact Japanese. So anyway, the reason I'm saying all that is just I wasn't expecting it because he's not in that family. But once I saw them together, I was like, oh, I can see how they can make this work because you can say that he has some sort of history, even if it isn't like a family relationship. They could even portray it like Solo and Jeff Cobb like used to fight each other back in the day because like Solo was the street fighter and like Jeff Cobb was like maybe one of his adversaries that became like an ally over the years. I mean, you can make some sort of link between Solo and Cobb and that family to where it makes sense for him to be in that group with those guys. So I like it. And in the ring, Jeff Cobb was great. So like, the idea of him versus Jacob Fatu, for instance, I think is really intriguing and something I really would not have had on my bingo card heading into 2025 on WWE TV, seeing that kind of stuff. And I also think it's smart because it puts more of like a divide between Solo and Jacob where you can see the seeds that have been planted over and over that Jacob is probably going to be turned on or get out in front of it and get away from, like, they're heading towards the Solo Sikoa Jacob Fatu feud, obviously, but you can also have Jeff Cobb versus Jacob Fatu in that mix also and stuff. So I like that. I like the way he debuted coming out of the crowd out of nowhere. He got a good reaction. They made him look like a serious threat, like right off the bat, as far as like who he's aligned with and, you know, how Jacob reacted to him. Like Jacob looked at him like he knew who he was, but like was uncomfortable he was there. So yeah, I like it. Obviously, we don't really know a whole lot about, you know, more than what we saw so far, which isn't a lot, but, you know, good for him. And I'm glad that he, you know, skipped NXT also, you know, a guy who's been around as long as he has. He was also like, he was an Olympic wrestler, wasn't he? Like an actual, and so that had to have been around 20, at least 15 years ago. So like, he's a guy who's got a lot of physical miles on him and a lot of pro wrestling years on him. And I feel like he shouldn't have had to go to NXT for like a year or 2 years or something. Like he's ready to be on Raw or SmackDown now. So I liked what I saw. Good for him. Happy for him.
Yeah. Jeff Cobb has always been very good. And, you know, he's done great in New Japan. I know he had a WWE tryout a while ago and it didn't come to fruition. Yeah. He had the spots in AEW, but that never turned into anything.
I saw him wrestle live in AEW in Atlanta. It was like match against Moxley. I'm pretty sure it was. So
yeah, that was early. Right? It was early.
Yeah,
AEW.
like first time. It was the show that Cody and Wardlow had the first cage match.
Yeah. So yeah, he's been around, but he's always done very well. Curious to see how he fits in with this group and where it's going with Jacob and Solo, because they don't need to do anything that's going to halt Jacob's momentum, and a Solo feud might turn into that. But a match with Jeff Cobb won't, because they've definitely teamed together. Pretty sure they face each other on the Indies as well. Like they got history together, Jeff Cobb and Jacob Fatu, so they can do plenty with these two. They know each other fairly well.
Yeah, it's going to be bangers. And I mean, they're definitely, if you had to give me the option of Jeff Cobb versus Jacob Fatu or Jeff Cobb versus Solo Sikoa, I'm taking the Fatu match 10 out of 10 times. I mean, as anybody would. Solo has been an interesting experiment, I feel like. His trajectory was very strange. Like, I remember watching him in NXT Level Up because I was covering that show for the Weekender, and he was only on it maybe 2 times or something. Like, he was on that show just a couple times. And I was very confused because they were calling him Solo Sikoa, but they were mentioning he was the brother of the Usos, but he was on Level Up. But then, like, before I knew it, he won the North American title, like almost immediately on the NXT show. And then from there, pretty much, or even maybe before, around that same time, he might have even debuted before he won that North American title. I can't remember, but he showed up and helped Roman retain the championship at one of those overseas shows.
That was Clash of the Castle, or yeah,
Clash of the Castle, the McIntyre.
Yeah, McIntyre. Yeah.
Yes, and then from there, it's like he was just kind of like on the side as kind of like the afterthought of the bloodline in a lot of ways, like kind of an enforcer, but not really doing a whole lot. And then just like mega pushed, like this, like the second Roman was gone, they tried real hard with Solo, and I just don't think he was ever really ready for the spot. I don't think, unless he has a great opponent, his matches aren't very good in my opinion. He's very, very basic and not particularly over in the way that you probably should be coming out of that storyline. Like, look at where Jey Uso's at, look at where Roman's at, look at where the majority of other people involved in that.
I'll give him some grace in that he was over in the Roman stuff. Like, he made Roman a babyface because he was such a good heel. The segment, obviously, with Paul Heyman, where they put Heyman through a table, it was great. he was getting "fuck you" Solo chants. It's not like they were fully chanting for Roman or fully chanting for Cody during that. He was over during that stuff. The problem was he was never made to be an actual threat. He lost all of his big
Every
matches.
big match. Yeah.
So his segments, I actually thought his segment work was very good. And his segment work, I thought, got him over well as a heel. But then he got in the ring and it's like, oh, well, we know this guy's losing. We know that he's not an actual threat because he's just going to lose every single match. And half of Cody's title defenses were against Solo. And then the Roman matches, he lost. War Games, they lost. So he just was never an actual threat. So that is what hurt him, I think, more than, oh, he just wasn't over coming out of it. He wasn't over because he just kept losing. So no one bought him. But he was over. He was like generating some good heat.
That's true. It was just very short-lived, but for the exact reasons that you mentioned, it does boil down to. Now, I will stand by. I don't think he has particularly great matches, or that he's like particularly entertaining in the ring. But I do think that it's a fact that, you know, he was obviously booked to lose the matches that he lost, as everybody is in wrestling, and they never pulled the trigger with him winning any of his big matches. So he did get the stigma really fast that like he just isn't like, if he was a more credible threat, you could see him maybe beating Cody, but like every time the two of them wrestled, it was like everybody knew. But you know what I mean? Like nobody actually thought he was going to lose the belt to Cody, like any of those matches. But anyways, and also it's not like it's unsalvageable. Like Solo is still in a good spot and he's still good enough in the ring that like, you know, he's going to be on the show and he's still probably going to get a good push. Or, you know, if they can get more talented guys around him, he does do good mic work, like you said. You know, he doesn't have to like completely step out of the ring, but if they want to put him more in like not necessarily a managerial role, but like, you know, keep guys around him like, you know, like Jeff Cobb, and like, you know, have him outside the ring and assist, you know, his guys, like get in the ring and, you know, do some Samoan drops and some Samoan spikes and, you know, go ram your ass into some dude's face in the corner or whatever. But he's one of those guys that I also think is just better off. And like I'd rather see Solo wrestle like, you know, once a month than once a week, if that makes sense. Like, you know, if done right, I think he's got a spot. But I would just I don't know, like, where do you think they go with the whole Bloodline 2.0 thing now anyway? Because they have Solo. Let's assume Jacob is going to be out soon. So you'd have Solo, you'd have Jeff Cobb, and then you have Tama Tonga, and then like Tonga Loa whenever he's back. That's the group for now.
Yeah, Tama and Tonga are both out right now. So I don't know when they're supposed to be back. Bronson Reed was aligned with them and seemed like he could have made some sense, but he's going to be out for a while. So right now it's just Solo, Jacob, and Jeff Cobb. And Jeff Cobb, or Solo's kind of third wheel on that one. Jacob's already getting super over. He's already hot right now. I don't think it's going to take Jeff Cobb long when he starts working and getting in the ring for people to be like, oh, this guy, he's cool. We like him. Solo is going to be the guy who is going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see how long it takes before they just turn Jacob babyface. Because I think his actual character and in-ring style is way better suited as a heel because of like how savage he can be in the ring and like how just like, but people are always going to get behind him and cheer him to a degree because it's so impressive seeing the way that he moves and the way that he wrestles is very entertaining. But I almost hope he's in like a, obviously not character wise, but similar to Steve Austin. Like don't change anything about Jacob, just have him destroy bad guys. Like if you're going to turn him heel, like don't make him suffer and succotash Jacob Fatu. Like, you know, like don't change anything about him. Just have him beat up bad guys. But is Hikuleo still in the company? Didn't he get signed like a long time ago?
Yeah, he's not on the bench, but he's there.
But he hasn't done any NXT or anything. No. I wonder what the play with him is going to be. Like, because you'd figure that like now or sometime around now or even before, like would have been the time during the whole new bloodline thing that he would have come in as like the new giant of the group. WWE may not feel like he's ready or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. But you know, just interesting that they've had him for as long as they have, and we haven't even seen him. So
I don't know when we're gonna see Hikuleo. I have no idea. So maybe at some point. Cyclops Better Than Wolverine says, "Is Cobb on the rocks and a NOYE family tree now?" Yeah, we're gonna have to get an updated family tree that they can put out there. We can find Jeff Cobb on there.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to AEW Spotlight.
Over 1 million fans and a great number in the demo tuned in. And it was a great show, and I think it's been a run of great shows.
Anarchy in the Arena the challenge has been made by Swerve Strickland. We don't know who is in this just yet. There were a lot of people in this closing segment. Who are you thinking we're going to see in Anarchy in the Arena based on this closing segment or based on just what you're thinking?
Okay, so I've got a few layers on this. So all right. I don't know if they're going to, I'm like assuming they're going to do 5-on-5, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with the heel side. Who is most likely? So Mox, Claudio, Gabe Kidd, Young Bucks. That's 5, right?
Yeah.
But you can also make a case to include Marina if you include Willow on the other side. Like I don't know how they go about doing that. Obviously, I have no issue with the women fighting the men in AEW at all. I watch quote unquote intergender wrestling all day, every day on the indies. Like, so I'm totally fine with that idea, but they could also do it in a way if they feel like they have to, where Marina and Willow just fight amongst themselves and like and they don't get involved with the guys somehow. Although we've seen Marina like choke out dudes on AEW TV. So like, I feel like it should be kind of fair game across the board for everybody in this one. So I want to say, based on the story, I would like to see Marina and Willow officially in the match also. I just doubt it. But I think that they'll, at the very least, they'll be involved in some way, shape, or form in the match, the two of them. As they should be, because they've been important to the story. On the Death Rider Young Bucks side, though, I want to see Wheeler Yuta involved in the match. I feel like he deserves it. He's been in the story the entire time, and I feel like he's just totally overlooked. Like, so I feel like that's unfair. I feel like he should definitely be in the match. So maybe that's my 6. I'll put Wheeler Yuta in there to make it 6 for now. Maybe I'll change that. So then you got to go to the babyface side. You got to have Swerve, obviously. He announced the match. Nice Swerve stomp off the cage to everybody last night. Glad he didn't come down for it. Well, I know, right? Or even just standing there to begin with. They moved to him. But I do get a little freaked out when I know someone's going to land feet first, even though they broke his fall. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't need someone coming down and snapping their ankles or their Edge style, or Bronson Reed style. Like, we see it too often. Anyways. Swerve, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, Kenny Omega. And now this is where it starts getting really interesting, because you have Hook is in the ops. When he is ready to come back, he can be the 5th guy. You can have Shibata as the 5th guy, or, if we're going to 6, you can have both of them. There's your 6. But what I think is the most interesting prospect here is, I think it's going to be, whatever it is, I think there's going to be a one-off number for the baby faces going into the match. I think it's going to be like 5-on-4 or 6-on-5 heading into the match. There's going to be or maybe with like a week left or whatever. I think it's going to be part of the story. Who's going to be the last baby face to join the match? And I think it's going to be Eddie Kingston's big return. That's what I think is going to be like one of the big payoffs for this whole thing. Because also Gabe Kidd's the one who injured Kingston, so like it makes total sense with their history and stuff, and Kingston's history with Mox, and then he would be coming back. Obviously, doesn't like what he's been seeing from the Death Riders and Moxley while he's been on the sidelines. So I feel like this could be used as a vehicle to get Eddie Kingston right back in the mix as like one of the top guys in AEW and feuding with Mox again potentially, or the rest of the Death Riders. Obviously, he hates Claudio already and stuff too. So that's kind of my big prediction, I think, is that like Eddie Kingston will be the big like surprise babyface or guy on the babyface side.
I think Eddie Kingston is a good call. I've seen a lot of people kind of mentioning that one because of Gabe Kidd coming in, and obviously his Gabe Kidd taking him out, and then his just ties with Moxley and Claudio, and even the Bucks, because the Bucks hit the EVP trigger on him after Gabe Kidd injured him. So Eddie Kingston plays a big part in a lot of this. So could definitely see that. I think Willow and Marina have to be in this match. I don't know
Like
how you
officially.
don't include them. Yeah. I don't know how you don't include them in this match. They've done the mixed tag match with Moxley and Marina against Willow and Swerve. So you can do that. They've been involved in this at every turn for months now. For them not to be included, I think would be a giant misfire from AEW. So I think they have to be in this match. And Swerve even, he mentioned them last night during his challenge. He talked about Marina and Willow. I think they have to be in this match. I think you're likely to get 6-on-6 or 7-on-7. I'm of the belief that it's Anarchy in the Arena. Let as many people join as you want. Like, why announce who's in the match? Just whoever shows up.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Whoever shows up, just start fighting. Like, I think that's something they could do with this, especially when you have this many people involved, because it's always been 4-on-4 or 5-on-5. They've never gone higher than 5-on-5. The first year was 5-on-5. It's been 4-on-4 every year since then. So you're looking to potentially break that this year by going at least 6-on-6. Because if you're just doing 5-on-5, you're looking at Moxley, Kidd, the Bucks, and Marina. That's if I have to keep it to 5, those are the 5 I'm going with. Sorry to Claudio. Sorry to Wheeler Yuta. Like, you guys are just out on this one. And then on the babyface side, you're looking at Swerve, Kenny, Joe, Hobbs, and Willow. I think that would be the 5. And then if you do have Eddie Kingston, if he is back, he probably replaces Hobbs. I think that would be unfortunate for Hobbs and Claudio and potentially Wheeler and potentially Eddie if they are unable to compete in this match, because I don't know what they're doing with Wheeler Yuta. I don't know if they know what they're doing with Wheeler Yuta. It seemed like he was going to be like destined to rise out of all this Death Rider stuff, and he's not. He's just a guy. And maybe that's what he is. Maybe he's just a dude who gets his ass beat, and that's what we got to accept with him. I just don't know if there is a rising portion with Wheeler Yuta. I just don't.
I hate that. I'm unironically, I'm a big fan of Wheeler Yuta's. Like, I legitimately am. So I hope that's not the case. I mean, I could see maybe a scenario. I don't like it, but I could see a scenario where, since it's double or nothing, maybe, if they have to keep it a 5-on-5 or whatever. Although I like your idea way better, just like open-ended, just like whoever wants to show up for Team AEW versus whoever wants to show up for the Death Riders. Just people fight until there's one side still standing. But maybe they'll wind up doing like Claudio and Yuta in like a tag team match or something on Double or Nothing, like for the tag titles or something, and like some multi-team match. So I don't know. But see what's confusing.
The tag division sucks.
No,
the tag division's awful.
I agree. I'm not disputing that. But what's confusing to me is it felt like unless it's to get the tie in there with Kingston, which I'm all for, if this brings Kingston back. Otherwise, I don't know what the point of bringing Gabe Kidd into this is. If it boxes Wheeler Yuta or Claudio out, because this seems more like, to me, even if you take the Kingston tie-in out, it's almost as like Pac got hurt and Kid is almost like the replacement for Pac, if you even had to look at it that way, even if Kingston wasn't involved. I guess the way, there's so many angles you look at this, and it's like, why would Gabe Kidd be involved in this at all? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense to box Claudio or Wheeler out in favor of Gabe Kidd in this scenario at all. So
I'm with you. Gabe Kidd, when he came out last night, I was shocked it was Gabe Kidd. It was like, what's his tie to all of this? What's the point of him with Moxley? Like the Bucks, maybe you can piece it together, but at the same time, they just did War Dogs against Old School Bullet Club at New Japan Resurgence, and then they kind of continued that at MLP with War Dogs against Good Brothers. So it doesn't make a ton of sense of why Gabe Kidd would all of a sudden be trusting with the Young Bucks. Gabe Kidd also, Gabe Kidd only kind of looks out for himself. He's with the War Dogs. I understand that. Gabe Kidd's not the kind of guy that's like, let me go help John Moxley. Let me go help the Young Bucks type of thing. Gabe Kidd is like, I'm riding for myself and I'm riding for the War Dogs. That's it. I don't give a fuck about any of you other people. So you got to tie this together somehow. Eddie Kingston would be an easy way, but I still need something to explain why Gabe Kidd was there.
Yeah, because storyline wise, like what we're talking about just makes like logical sense, like for the story for Kingston to like reactively for Kingston to come out and like, but before you get there, there needs to be a reason for Gabe Kidd to be involved to begin with. And that's what we need to find out. Like, why is Gabe Kidd helping the Death Riders? And then once we find that out, then when Kingston comes back, then we're at where we need to be at.
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see who gets involved in the match. I assume they'll have that in the coming weeks, but I thought it was a good angle to close the show last night. And it was a good match too. Joe and Moxley never love interference in cage matches. You could see where it was going once like Claudio and Hobbs and everybody got to ringside. Gabe Kidd was a legit like surprise, like, oh, okay, that's something different. And then just the anarchy of the whole like closing stretch, I thought was really good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I definitely didn't expect Gabe Kidd to show. To be completely honest, at first glance, I thought it was Preston Vance for half a second. I was like, who was that? And then I was oh, that's definitely. I realized it was Gabe Kidd once I got a close up, but just when I saw like the side face with the beard, I was like, is that Preston Vance?
I only saw like the hoodie at first. Because they didn't zoom in on his face too much at the original like bit. I thought it was Jack Perry. And SP3 made fun of me of like, you're the only person who cares about Jack Perry. But where is Jack Perry? The jack-offs got to unite. We're not getting ejaculated right now, and we need Jack Perry back.
I don't know. Wherever Jack Perry's at, he's probably off somewhere being really cool.
Just hanging out with Anna Jay. Bless. Dude,
good for him. Beat up CM Punk backstage and as Anna Jay.
Well, let's not.
We all saw the footage.
Yeah, we did.
Do not sue me for defamation, Phil, please. Kidding. This is a joke. We all saw the footage.
My AW spotlight is Ricochet being the greatest heel of all time. This man, he absolutely rules. He is so good in this role. And it's not, I like the Young Bucks. Everybody prefaces, I like this person. Now let me bury this person. I like the Young Bucks. When they do heel stuff, it feels like they're just like doing it to like pop themselves as like, this is a cool thing that a heel should be doing, but we just also want to be really cool. Ricochet does this stuff and like it's actual good heel work. The figure 4 on a one-legged man last night, hilarious. The way he plays to the crowd, his little mannerisms of yanking the leg away as Gowen was trying to get it and everything. Like, he's so good in this role. So good. This match was good. I'm not going to say like it's the greatest match ever or anything. Like, Zach Gowen is limited. Bless what he can do in the ring. And he can still go pretty well for his age and limitations. but Ricochet's just so damn good as a heel. And I can't wait for this Mark Briscoe feud. I can't wait. I think it's going to be, I don't know how long it's going to be. Maybe it's only going to be 1 week. They're just going to do a match of Double or Nothing, and that's going to be that. But I think Mark Briscoe's underrated as a babyface and how he can get people behind him. And I think this version of Ricochet is top tier heel stuff. So I think this match, it's already going to, like, people are going to have high expectations for it. I think it might exceed actual expectations.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too at the beginning of the match when Gowen is basically crawling at Ricochet, and he like ran away scared. He like ran through the ropes to the outside of the ring, like he was afraid because he just stays like, what's this guy doing? By the way, I've actually seen a handful of like actual amateur wrestlers that are like been like either miss a leg or like don't have like their whole lower half of their body and stuff. And it's always super, super impressive to see because that is the technique. Like, you basically have to stay low to the ground for obvious reasons, but like the way that they can like figure that out and still be competitive is incredibly, incredibly impressive to me, how you can adapt like that. And the way that Gowen is able to do that, like, because he was significantly better in the ring than the last time I'd seen him. Like, to be honest, like he seemed because before, it's hard, obviously, with, like you mentioned, he has the limitations, obviously, with just having the one leg, but like the way he's able to like roll to like, cover distance and stuff like that. And he's ultra athletic, obviously. I think he does like Ninja Warrior and stuff. So he can do all the moves that like he's better in the ring than like a lot of people that have both legs. I mean, just straight up, like, so I got to give him a ton of credit. Like what he's doing, I'm very, very, very impressed by. I was super impressed by it, 20 years ago when he was doing it on SmackDown. I thought WWE kind of missed an opportunity with him. I don't know what the best way of going about booking him would have been, but it just felt like at the time, like, especially because things were like that's back when like things going viral was kind of like a new thing. I just feel like you could have done a lot more marketing a guy like, dude, we have a guy on a roster with one leg that's doing moonsaults and stuff. Like, this is pretty incredible. Like, like when he beat the Big Show, people popped massively for that back in the day. Like he was feuding with Stephanie McMahon back in the day, but it was just super, super short-lived, the entire thing. And I always felt like, I was a big fan of what he was doing. So I just felt like they just kind of missed some big opportunities back then. And to see him on AEW last night was honestly, like, I really, really enjoyed it. I almost made it my spotlight for today's show, but I chose what we just talked about because it was such a big story on the show and, what did it be used? And I want to talk about Kingston and stuff. But this was my other pick, honestly, was I wanted to talk about Ricochet and Gowen because I really enjoyed the match. I'm still ultra impressed by Zach Gowen. I would have no problem with him being not necessarily like, I don't know if I need him as like a full-time roster member for AEW because I don't think he has any aspirations of being a full-time wrestler at this point in his life. But if he was to show up on more indie shows or more companies, I'd absolutely support him and watch him wrestle. Like, I was super entertained. And the way that they do it doesn't seem like it's like, and maybe it's easier for me too, because once again, I saw guys, like there was this guy, Kyle Maynard, who he actually won an ESPY back when I was like in high school. And he has no legs and his arms stop at his elbows. And he was like, he was a high school wrestler with a winning record with basically no arms or legs. And it's like, so I know that this stuff is actually legitimately possible, even with people's limitations. So seeing someone like Zach Gowen doing that, I'm just a humongous fan of it. And then on the other side, Ricochet doing the best work of his entire career right now. Like, I can't believe where we're at with him, from the throwing toilet paper at him and the way that he used that to like morph into this character we're getting now. But he can back it up in the ring because he's more athletic than anybody else on the roster outside of maybe Will Ospreay. It's the only critique I have of Ricochet is that I don't like that spirit gun finisher. Like, the dude can do every move in the world and his finisher is a clothesline. Like, I don't like that. And it seems to me like he's trying to be like, it's like the counter of the Hidden Blade. It's basically like that's what it comes across to me is like him and Ospreay, whenever they go one-on-one again, it's going to be like Spirit Gun versus Hidden Blade. But outside of that, like, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Ricochet's absolutely killing it. Love the work that he's doing. And I can't say enough good things about Zach Gowen. I would love to see Zach wrestling on a more regular basis if he wanted to, or if not, like, that's a perfect retirement match to go out on. Like, all these people got to see it on HBO Max, got to see it on TNT, TBS, and yeah, what a way to go out if that was it for him. That's got to be super cool. I saw him tweeting a little bit about it, but that's got to be super cool. Like, the last time you were on national television, I think I retweeted it actually. What did he say? He said, "Thank you, AEW, for welcoming me to your locker room and being so kind. Thank you, Tony Khan, for me." Oh, that was a different tweet. Anyways, I saw something where, it's got to be pretty cool to be like 20 years between televised, national televised matches, and then to come back and, in my opinion, knock it out of the park, doing everything that it couldn't have got any better, in my opinion. And it was so random that they set it up. Like a week ago, this prosthetic leg taken out of the crowd, and it's like, wait, Zach Gowen's gonna have another match, and I thought it went really damn well. So congratulations to both guys. Good stuff.
It was very random. When Gowen was shown on Collision, it felt like it was more than just, hey, Zach Gowen's here and in attendance with his family. This is cool. Like, please welcome back Zach Gowen. Like, they lingered on him too long. You know what I mean? So where you were thinking like, oh, something's gonna happen to him. Hopefully nothing bad happens to him, but something's going to happen to him. And then, of course, something happened with Ricochet. And then, like, when they did the angle, I was like, okay, that was good heat for Ricochet. Is that going to, like, lead this? Is somebody going to come to Gowen's defense? Like, what do we do? And then when they announced the match, I was like, oh, they're going full bore with this Zach Gowen thing. But it was cool to see him get that moment and get that match because some people might not remember his run in WWE because it was – over 2 decades ago at this point. Like, it was a while ago. So it was cool to see him kind of get that moment and everything. And I don't need to see him full time. If there's some one-off spots for him, then okay. I think there's only so much you can kind of do with that before it's like, all right, like, how much can you really get out of this? It's not a novelty, but I think too many people are going to view it too much as a novelty, and you don't want to go to that too often. But if this was like the swan song type of thing, like, I don't know if you can ask for a better kind of swan song.
Yeah. Well, Ricochet is also the perfect opponent too. Like, because he can do anything, so, but yeah, credit to both guys. Good stuff. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I was marking out while I was watching it. I was really happy for Zach that he got that. I really was.
All right, we'll go to the other spotlight.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
We're gonna kind of jump around here. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna really jump around. We're gonna go to the indie spotlight. I apologize for hitting that bumper.
I'm gonna give a big motherfucking shout out.
Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling crowned new men's and women's champion. Josh Alexander won the men's title, winning a 20-man gauntlet, last defeating Matt Cardona. And Giselle Shaw won the women's title, defeating Kylie Ray. Your thoughts on them crowning champions?
I thought that they went with two really good options. Giselle, I feel like, had a lot of momentum heading into her run at Impact, but like just didn't really, similar to like Lady Frost. It was like they're here, they got a lot of buzz, have some good matches, and then just like they're gone. It's like, it just felt like, so it's good to see Giselle, thriving in MLP, because MLP I think is a super, super high quality indie company. They're almost like an in-between of like an indie and a TV show because of the way they're presented and the production and everything. And their affiliation, obviously, with Scott D'Amore and their links that they have with like Don Callis and those guys and stuff. So like, so I was happy for Giselle. First off, so first ever women's MLP world champion, and then Josh Alexander won a gauntlet match. It was like a Royal Rumble style gauntlet where it came down to him and Cardona, and there was like a mini match at the end there. And you know, it sounds like that Alexander is gonna at some point have that title belt, or it's gonna get mentioned or something on AEW TV. Which I don't know what they're gonna do with that, or if that's a great idea. But like, you know, I like that Alexander is featured in the Don Callis family and he's getting AEW time, but I'm pretty sure I remember them saying something on commentary during that show about how they're going to bring that title to AEW.
They definitely mentioned that, and Don Callis was on commentary.
Right.
I don't think Alexander had it on Wednesday.
He didn't. That's why I was confused. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I don't remember if they mentioned it on commentary or not, because I don't fully pay attention to commentary.
I didn't catch it on commentary. I was listening out for it at the beginning, and I may have missed it. But that's the reason I was saying I thought that they mentioned that, because I could have sworn that they mentioned that, and then he didn't have it. But that's not to say that he couldn't show up with it later down the road. That's totally fine as well. You know, I'm all for AEW not featuring more title belts on their show, to be completely honest. But you know, I think it's good for MLP to have their title belt featured on AEW. I mean, obviously, it'd be good promotion for Maple Leaf Pro. But I mean, I guess I'm just kind of interested to see where the whole company goes, because I think that they got a good thing going. Their next show is already announced for just maybe a couple months out. They have another one like already featured on Triller. I just wish that they were a part of like the Triller TV Plus package. You had to pay for their pay-per-views, their standalones. But they have a high enough quality show that I understand it's a double-edged sword. Like, they're limiting the amount of people that are watching the shows, unfortunately, because way more people would watch it if it was just a part of the package. You could just like flip from GCW to MLP. That'd be huge for, you know, visibility for them. But they do put on a super high quality, high production show that they're probably trying to offset costs as much as they possibly can on. You can probably do that a lot easier. They're selling pay-per-view if enough people are buying it. So, you know, I understand but then they ultimately wind up putting them on YouTube anyways later on, don't they? So I don't know. I guess I'm torn on the distribution. Like, I would prefer if more people could watch I shouldn't say could. I will say more people would watch their show if it was just free or it was just part of like the monthly package. And I think that'd be beneficial to them. But outside of that, I
don't know what kind of cut they get from Triller. I don't know how all that works. Like, maybe this is profitable for them to do a standalone show and they get to charge, you know, $20, $30, whatever it is, to do their shows. And that works better for them than being part of the Triller Plus package, because they're only running monthly shows. It's not like they're running every week or every other week, which a lot of the indie companies on Triller Plus, that's what they typically run. They don't run a ton of monthly stuff. If they do, they're probably lesser known indies that aren't going to get, you know, a ton of profitability anyway. So it still makes more sense for them to be on Maple Leaf Pro. And look, for all we know, like, it could have to do with use of talent too. I know that stuff's gotten complicated over the years with AEW people only working certain shows, WWE people working certain shows. So Kylie Ray's part of WWE ID and she's on Evolve and she was in a heavily featured match here. So I don't know how all that works out. And I don't know what the goals are for Maple Leaf Pro. I think they're a good Canadian indie right now. Are they looking for a weekly television deal? Are they looking for a different kind of distribution model to where maybe they get their highlights shown weekly on, I'm just going to throw out Access TV because that's what they used to do for New Japan. Are they looking to do something like that to kind of feed into these monthly shows. I said it on In the Weeds. I'll repeat it here, but I think there's a market for a countdown style special for these monthly pay per views. And you know what I'm talking about as a UFC fan, Jensen. They used to do like excellent countdown shows that would get you like really hyped for these big fights. It's like, oh, Chuck Liddell's fighting Tito Ortiz. Why? I remember this is how I got sold on Matt Hughes and Hoist Gracie. I didn't know anything about UFC. I knew the name Hoist Gracie because he was a pioneer of the sport. I was like, oh, cool, Hoist Gracie's returning. Like, whatever. I didn't watch Hoist Gracie at UFC 1. I'm not going to watch him at UFC, what was that, like 50 or something? It was around that area.
So, I can't remember the number, but I remember him fighting Matt. He came back and fought Matt Hughes like way after his prime.
Yeah. But like I didn't know like how actual washed he was, and I didn't know how good Matt Hughes was. I watched that countdown special and I saw like Matt Hughes highlights, and then I saw all the old clips of Hoist Gracie, and I'm like, oh man, maybe this old dude can do it. Like maybe he can kind of pull this off. And that was the first UFC event I went out of my way to watch. And then I became a fan after that. And like, but those countdown specials were so good. And I think NWA did this really well before they got NWA Power. Like the Nick Aldis and Tim Storm stuff. I thought those countdown specials were really well done. And I think wrestling could use something like that if you're only running a monthly event. Like, how else are you going to sell these events? You can put it on a poster and be like, look at this cool match, but every indie company in existence does look at this cool match. What can you do to separate yourself besides that? And I think doing some type of countdown show that airs on YouTube to get you excited for these matches and for these personalities can go a long way if you're just trying to sell one standalone pay-per-view.
Yeah, I completely agree. Free content to draw people in to pay for your pay-per-view, especially people that don't know that your company exists or may recognize some of the wrestlers and not others and be like, wait a second, I didn't know this was happening. And they're fairly priced. I think it was like $30 for the package. I think you got this show and the next show all together for like $30 or something like that. So it's not like it's not ridiculous. Like it's not like the UFC where they're charging like $80 to watch every pay-per-view now, which has gotten crazy.
That's why I don't watch UFC anymore. And if I do, I go through other means because I ain't paying for those pay-per-views.
Yeah. I know what you mean. But we were talking about it last week. Like I'm not even going to go to the UFC in Atlanta because it was like $200 just to get in the door in the nosebleeds for not even a pay-per-view, like just to see Kamaru Usman, like former champion. No big deal. But anyway, that's another conversation for another time. You did mention Kylie Ray, which I'm glad you brought her up because I forgot to mention that's who Giselle Shaw beat to become the first MLP Women's Champion. She like used brass knucks on her and kneed her in the head and won the title. So forgot to mention that's how Giselle actually won the championship. But yeah, I like MLP though. I think they're it's a really impressive company, and for the few shows that they've done, I think they've been it's come off as a success. I have no idea monetarily what they're looking like, nor do I need to. And it's not really of my concern, but like just thinking like if it's working for them business wise, like if this is the best route for them and they're doing well and they're sustaining and like this is the right model and they've gone with the pay-per-view route and stuff, then good for them.
All right, now we can go to the other spotlight.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
Steve Maclin and Eric Young had a bloody dog collar match last week on TNA Impact. It came off the heels of the report that TNA was going to be cutting down on excessive blood and blading. And then the president came out and said, like, if it makes sense for the match and the story, like, it's fine. Like, we talk with creative, we talk with the wrestlers. We want to make sure it makes sense. We just don't want to overdo it. They are looking for potential, advertisers and potential broadcast partners, and they don't want the blood and guts the blood, the gore, and the guts that doesn't sell to advertisers and broadcast partners, as AEW famously has trouble getting both of those things. So what'd you think of this match and then the reports of the blood being cut down on?
The blood being cut down on isn't really, like, that concept doesn't really surprise me. You know, I don't really have a problem with it either. I don't think that blood's even necessary in wrestling, honestly, believe it or not, considering all the death matches I cover and stuff. I don't think it's even necessarily, like, I mean, it can add to certain things in certain situations, but I can do without people cutting themselves in the forehead with razor blades. Like, it doesn't really, the art of pro wrestling to me is the story and the match and the build up and everything. And, once again, blood can help. And like when it's a cage match, when it's a certain type of feud and stuff, I think there's a place for it. Like there were times in like WWE's PG era, for instance, where I was like, oh, they definitely should have, this would have been a good time for blood, and they didn't do it. But at the same time, you're opening up your opportunities for advertising and for just more eyes on your product in general. Like you might alienate some more of your like more mature or older audience, but like for every, I'm just making up numbers obviously, but for every, 10 adults like us that might stop watching because, oh no, there's no blood anymore, it's not violent enough anymore, this isn't for me anymore. You might get, 10 kids for every one adult or whatever that like now their parents let them watch wrestling that they didn't before. You get a whole new audience out of that. So I don't really. And then like the advertiser thing is funny. You brought that up because, I know you're also kind of like referencing like the Domino's with the Domino's sponsorship.
I mean that and like really any of the sponsorships that, because Vince said like, the blood and guts of AEW, like I'm sure their broadcast partners are happy with that. It's like, seems like they are, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's whatever works for you and your company, though, and whatever your prerogative is. Like, I don't fault TNA for wanting to cut down on the blood. But I would support the decision either way, honestly, if I were them, because I think as a fan of theirs, because I think they're just trying to do whatever they can to kind of like survive and compete in whatever way that they can. So like, because them not using blood doesn't make Ace Austin a bad wrestler all of a sudden. It doesn't make Steve Maclin a bad wrestler all of a sudden. It doesn't make Eric Young, like you can take the blood away and these guys are still super talented wrestlers who can tell great stories and have great matches. Like you don't necessarily need the blood for me to enjoy it. But that said, this match was super bloody that we're talking about. Like this match was like Steve Maclin was busted open within minutes and just pouring. Like they were like slipping around outside the ring, like on blood. This was a great dog collar match. I really like the spot when Maclin put Judas Icarus and Travis Williams in like the double crosshairs and like speared them both in the corner at the same time towards the end of the match and stuff. This was brutal. I love the finish too with Maclin pulling Young off the ropes with the dog collar and hitting the KIA onto the chain. This was a really good match. I shouldn't say it was a really bloody match. The match itself, like they just beat the shit out of each other, and that's what you want in a dog collar match. Like they did some wrestling moves throughout the match as well, but the majority of this was like blood, them using the chain, and them just looked, but it was violent, and they beat the shit out of each other. So, and Maclin retained, which is good for him. Like I think that they've quickly established this new title belt with Maclin as the champion very quickly, as something that at least matters to some degree based on what Macklin's willing to go through to hold on to it. So, this was entertaining, and it made me. It as a Mad Dog Connolly fan, I'm sitting back watching it, going like, "Oh, I'd love to see them just bring him in randomly, and just him and Cutler one-on-one in one of these kind of matches would be crazy." But that's a long shot, obviously. But it's cool that there's a guy like Mad Dog Connolly out there who's become such a specialist in that specific type of match that it feels like you could like bring him into any company and have him do that, and it would make sense. But yeah, I'm happy that Maclin retained. I'm still a huge fan of Eric Young's, and but I mean, here's the thing. In a match like that, blood adds to the match because it's a dog collar match. But I also could have done with like way less blood than that. You know what I mean? Like I would have been okay if it wasn't as bloody as it was. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, Maclin bleeds, he's bleeding. Like he's just
and he sweats like crazy too. So it's like,
he completely gushes. So I thought this match should have been saved for the pay-per-view. Like their pay-per-view next week isn't looking great, and Steve Maclin and Eric Young being added to it would have definitely helped. So I thought it should have been saved for the pay-per-view. And then maybe they're not so worried about, we're less blood because of TV deals and advertisers because it's your pay-per-view. You're not worried about the TV deal. Advertisers, different story, but you gotta know what to expect a little bit more on the pay-per-view compared to the TV. What can you do? Go check out our interview with Steve Maclin on In the Weeds that we did yesterday. He joined us on Wednesday. I had to make sure my days were correct there.
And the match is free on the TNA's YouTube also. So like if you guys want to watch that match, it's they uploaded it for free, which is awesome.
The other spotlight and why I switched it up, I didn't want to like fully end on a somber note, but I didn't want to transition into, hey, let's talk about this and then talk about something else. So we're going to kind of end on a somber note as the wrestling world sadly lost Sabu on Sunday, passed away at the age of 60. And I mean, to me, and I think to a lot of people, one of the most influential wrestlers of his time. I think a lot of people have said as much, and I don't think he gets enough credit for as influential as he was, but we'll probably start to see it a lot more now that he is gone, which it's sad. It always works like that. Sabu was one of the guys that got me into wrestling outside of WWE and WCW, largely WCW because I grew up a WCW kid. But, I saw Sabu on some of the early WCW shows, and I saw him jump off the Raw sign. I was like, what? Who's this person? What's going on here? And then AOL, internet dial-up, I would like check it out and see all the ECW clips. I always loved his chair offense. I thought that was some like really creative stuff, especially, as an American wrestling fan who only watched WWE and WCW, like you just didn't see stuff like that. So complete innovator. I'm happy he got to do his last match. I know there was a lot of controversy off of that, but from everybody whose opinion that I care about on that match, everyone seems super satisfied and super grateful that he got to do that match against Joey Janela. And I think that match was everything you would want a Sabu last match to be, both good and bad.
Yeah, I think that Sabu would agree too. Like it's a double-edged sword to it, right? Because it's like the match itself. Okay, I'll say this first. Obviously, rest in peace to Sabu. I talked a lot about him on the Weekender this past Sunday, and I'm going to repeat some of that here now, I'm sure, as well. 60 is too young for anyone to die. The closer I get to 60, it doesn't seem that far away now, which is crazy. And 60 doesn't seem nearly as old as it used to me. And on one hand, it's 60 is way better than, in your 30s or 40s, which is a lot of Sabu's generation that we grew up loving. A lot of those guys didn't even make it to 60. So especially with the kind of style and lifestyle a lot of these guys had, from that era, making it to 60 is almost like an accomplishment in one way, which is kind of wild, but 60 is still young in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. And you hate to see that. But once again, on that flip side, it's if Sabu could have known this was his last match going into it, this is pretty much the epitome of going out on your terms. This is he went out doing Sabu moves, going into barbed wire, flying out of the ring. The Sandman came out to help him. It was I mean, Joey Janela, like this was his dream match. So Janela did everything that he could to, make that match, memorable and make it, like to honor the career of Sabu through that match, which I thought Joey did a good job of. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't think that match is like, that's not the reason Sabu died. I don't think things like Kratom, you can get Kratom at a head. Kratom, the fact that Kratom's even in the conversation with this is just wild to me. I don't think that Sabu is the kind of guy, especially when you see people that knew him and speak like this. I don't think Sabu is the kind of guy who was going to be forced to do anything. The guy was famously at a GCW event like a couple years ago, and he was at the building and advertised for a match and didn't go do the match.
He was advertised for his Hall of Fame and was just downstairs and just didn't go up the elevator because he didn't want to do it.
So
you're not gonna...
I don't like this narrative of like they forced Kratom down his throat and made him wrestle this match and then it killed him. It's like that's not fair to look at it that way. It's not fair to Sabu. It's not fair to Lauderdale and GCW. It's not fair to Janela. It's not fair to anybody involved to lay blame on this kind of stuff. The way I look at it is similar to how you do. This guy, Sabu, chose to have this retirement match. Joe Janela was a lifelong Sabu fan that wanted this match. GCW is the company that promoted the match. And Sabu was a grown man who had made a series of decisions throughout his life, professionally and personally, that in my personal opinion, nobody could have made Sabu do anything Sabu didn't want to do. So, and then by the way, Sabu was like hanging out, drinking beer, doing commentary. Like he was like, it wasn't like he just had this match, went to the hospital and died. Everybody he was
at WrestleCon that weekend. He did a podcast shortly after. Like he made appearances. Right. He was at some indie show a couple weeks ago as well. It wasn't like he did the match and then was in the hospital for a month and then passed away. Like he was still living his life. He lived a hard life. In the ring, outside of the ring. People have mentioned, Melissa Coates, like that death really hit him hard, and people weren't sure he would make it long after she passed away, and because that took a toll on him. So placing blame on GCW and everything, just dumb, absolutely stupid.
I agree, and I feel bad that so many people have to get on the defensive about that. But on flipping it up a little bit, I just want to get that out of the way, a little bit of defense on some of the people involved and that kind of stuff. Just want to throw that out there. But as far as Sabu's actual career and me being a fan of his, similar to you, Jeremy, I think Sabu was probably one of the first people that I knew of that wasn't a regular on WWE or WCW. I remember him in WCW. He did something where he went through a table on the outside of the ring in WCW when I was a kid. And I remember being it was people just didn't do that kind of stuff, like you said. And then the era of the internet where you can, I would watch him on Real Player. Remember, you download these short video files and pull up Real Player. Or later on, it'd be Kazaa or LimeWire. That's also how I discovered guys like Amazing Red, guys like Trent Acid and stuff like that back in the day. But before all that was finding out about guys like Sabu. Then obviously once I started getting to ECW, because that started airing on TNN when it was the Nashville network. And I got that here in Atlanta. And then also they would run on Hot Atlanta, which was a local station. And they'd run ECW reruns and Roller Jam reruns back to back on this channel. It was my favorite channel. It existed for 2 years, and I would watch it over the summers. And that was how I how I became an even bigger fan of ECW, because like they just aired all these old episodes on this random channel in the middle of the night that I would watch during the summer. So I started getting into Sabu. I remember I had his old action figure, like that first line of ECW figures. Had Rob Van Dam. I always liked them as a tag team. I thought it was cool how they had that bond with like Bill Alfonso, where like even if they were wrestling one another, Fonzie would go back and forth managing each guy like separately in the same match. I always thought that was kind of cool. Obviously big memories would be stuff like, matches with Taz were legendary. I also think that put Taz on a different level for me too, that I was like, Sabu was so insane that the fact that Taz could like choke him out to me was a big deal. When Sabu taped his arm together against Terry Funk, that was a big moment that scarred me for life as a kid. I remember thinking that I could never see anything that disgusting ever again in the rest of my life. And fast forward to 2025 and on the regular, and watch people put Gus's plates in each other's foreheads. But, little did I know that I'd wind up covering deathmatch wrestling. But, I remember stuff like that. There was a lot of stuff with Sabu. Obviously, like later on, and, it's wild because as old as we're getting, there's this whole generation of fans that discovered him through his matches with guys like Rey Mysterio and John Cena in the WWE. I remember him wrestling Rey and being so disappointed that the match ended on a no contest when they went through that table, that DDT on the outside. I was like, this is Sabu. This match doesn't end. This is Sabu. Like, and I think Rey was the world champion at the time too. That was for the WWE World Championship. So it's kind of cool that in this weird timeline, we actually got Sabu versus Rey Mysterio for the WC, or for the basically WCW World title, with the World Heavyweight Championship, the big gold belt. So yeah, I could go on and on about Sabu and his legacy and his memory, but as you said, he was insanely influential. It's cool that we got to see him and Janela have that match. Like, whatever controversy people might have about it aside, I hate to say this, but like, even if that match wouldn't have happened, I don't know if the outcome is any different. I don't think any of us do. I don't think we can put any blame on that. So for that reason, I'm going to say that I'm grateful that we got to see that match. And, I'm grateful for Sabu that he got one last, wanted to go out on his terms, having the kind of match he won. Like, let me put it this way. This probably isn't a good comparison to make, but you have guys like Ric Flair. Like, look at Ric Flair's last match, and like how just sad that was to see that, and just being like, this dude like literally died in the ring like multiple times, and like was revived. Like, it was a disaster watching that happen. Sabu, when the Sabu match ended, I was like, you know what, that went about as good as it probably could have, and that was what I expected to see out of Sabu. And then Janela got to give him the plaque, and like he got to get put over, and like. It was a feel-good moment. Everything fell into place, and Sabu got his moment. And it was like, so I'm grateful for that as a fan of wrestling, and a fan of GCW, and a fan of Sabu, and a fan of Janela. So like, rest in peace to Sabu. It's going to be weird watching some of these, like, I saw like Dark Side of the Ring is going to be on Sheik and stuff. So there's going to be a lot of like Sabu content still rolling out posthumously. Is that how you say that word, posthumously? Like after he's passed away. I've only ever seen it typed, or seen the word, but and also, speaking of posthumously, if that's how you say it, he should absolutely be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I think that's a no-brainer. He was way too influential, and especially to the current generation, so many people grew up on him, his peers, and everyone. Just the amount of respect you hear people saying, all the memories, all the pictures people have, doing the thing. I think it's a no-brainer, and I think unless I'm missing something on the top of my head, RBD inducting it would make perfect sense. It's just unfortunate that like so many things, and we're seeing it in baseball right now as well, like Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe just finally were unbanned from baseball. And it's like, Shoeless Joe, that happened back in like the early 1900s. Like, that is what it is. It's not I'm not happy that happened to him, but at the same time, like that was a very long time ago. Pete Rose like just passed away within the last handful of years, and like it'd be nice to let these guys get their flowers while they're still alive. Like Sabu should have went to the Hall of Fame when he could have went up there and done the induction speech and really be able to soak it in. We mentioned Randy Savage earlier. That was one of the biggest misses I think ever in like wrestling history, was like them waiting for Savage to die and then putting him in. Like he should have had that moment undoubtedly and stuff. So it sucks from that sense, but you know, I think Sabu should absolutely be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I'd imagine they'll do it at next WrestleMania, and Rob Van Dam would be the perfect guy to put him in my opinion.
Oh, for Jensen and I can RIP Sabu.
Yeah,
very influential, legendary wrestler, and just character in wrestling. And it sucks. It always sucks losing someone like Sabu, who's had an impact on wrestling in general, but also just our lives as wrestling fans. So, and RIP Sabu. Hate to end on a somber note, but
on a higher note with Sabu, literally, if you want. I remember one of my favorite things to do when I was younger. When I say younger, like 10 years ago, when the shoot interviews used to like started becoming more available online and stuff. I used to watch a lot of Sabu, like whatever any shoot interview Sabu would do, I would go out of my way to find it. And he would always just chain smoke blunts and joints and drink beer the entire time. So if you want to go off on a high note, maybe light one up for Sabu, because every time I ever saw that guy, that's what he was doing. So
all right. Anything to plug, Jensen?
No, not really. We're going to be off next week, most likely, everybody. It's my birthday next Thursday. I will probably be at the casino for a couple days, and I get really bad reception there. So we'll be back not next week, but the week after. And we have Connor Casey lined up, Jeremy lined up. So I'm looking forward to we haven't had him on the show for a couple of years, so I'm looking forward to catch up. He's still in Nashville, do you know?
Yeah, he's like in wrestling now. He's not doing like writing stuff. Like he's doing kind of his own promotion. So that's what we're going to talk to him about. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to catching up with him and talking about that. I like Connor. He's a good dude, and we got that Nashville tie-in. So yeah, looking forward to having him on in a couple weeks. Hopefully we get Mose on here for you guys again soon. This is very random, but this Saturday I'm going to Medieval Times to watch the Joust.
Nice.
I'm gonna throw some money on that, on the tournament. So
you can't stop. Don't bet on that. No,
I'm absolutely gambling on the Joust at the Medieval Times.
Call the hotline.
Jeremy, you want to know the sickest thing I've gambled on recently? By sick, I mean like I can't believe you're even allowed to gamble on this.
What?
I gambled on how fast it takes people in Formula One to change the tires at pit stops.
Call the hotline, please. Like, I know they have a lot of absurd props in sports, and I bet on a few of them. Tire changing. We're betting on tire changing.
Comes out of the decimal second. Yeah, it's like I was putting money on like 2.35 seconds, and they're getting like 2.44 and stuff. It's wild.
Call the hotline, Jensen. We got to for you. We got to stop. We'll be back in 2 weeks, everybody. I'll be back on this channel tomorrow in the weeds, myself and Jill Pearl. I don't know what we're talking about. Hopefully Jill knows what we were talking about. Until then, you can go back and watch interviews we did with Steve Maclin and Mark Marrow, Josh Bishop from last week. Go check out all those interviews. Appreciate everybody hanging out tonight. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be back tomorrow.